Hello, beautiful souls. Well, this is an energy report for the month of February, being recorded on February 19th, because the month of February has been so freaking intense that it's like I haven't been able to find a landing spot from which to speak. So I don't even know if it counts as an energy report. Well, of course it does. It's not a predictive energy report. It is a reporting on how it feels to be like in the thick of it. So last month in January, I talked about like the devil and entity energy. I feel like that's still kind of present, but to me it feels like behind. It feels like literally it's moved off out of my peripheral vision, and it is not relevant, not a relevant contributor at the moment right now. But I also talked about quantum leaps and walk-in experiences, and I feel like that is what we are really dealing with energetically, as well as sort of a portal, like a thinness to a barrier that previously kept us focused on ourselves. Focused not necessarily on ourselves, but on a certain range of perception within the 3D, 4D experience that we are having as ourselves. So what do I mean by that? Oh my God, February has been really hard for me, really hard. It's following on the heels of a very hard January and a very hard December and a very hard November. But each sort of month, like the ways in which it's hard are really shifting. And what feels really difficult in February for me personally is that, I was talking about the quantum leap in January, and I was talking about it from a space of like kind of being excited and feeling the energy before the having to live through it. And now I'm like in the middle of living through it, and I'm like, oh man, quantum leaping is hard, as well as this walk-in experience. Oh yeah, I was talking about our archetypal selves as well. So for me, what's happening, and I think this is the only way that I can share, and I can't extrapolate beyond myself right now, because there's so many varied ways that this energy is going to be cycled through all of us individually. But I hope as you listen to me speak, you can glean something that is of value for yourself. So I am experiencing what I call a walk-in, meaning that for me, it is not that my the soul consciousness that I was literally is dead and a whole different soul consciousness is coming in. It's not like that. That is a form of walk-in, but in this case, it's not what I am referring to. I am experiencing myself becoming like an avatar for the archetype, rather than predominantly being myself as an avatar for an ego perspective. Now, does that mean that I am beyond ego? No, that's not what I'm talking about. But it sounds really cool. It is my higher, I can't really use higher self because that's been used by Abraham Hicks, and it has a certain sort of like perception that has been built up around those words. But it is the greater fullness of the actual consciousness that my soul is comprised of. So it's as though for the previous decades of my life, I was occupied by a very, very, very small percentage of my soul consciousness. And most of what I was experiencing was my ego perception. And that's not a bad thing. They're just two different states of perception, two different states of being. So I felt very much like Amy, and I've really identified with the stories that I had around being Amy. And I experienced circumstances and events and relationship dynamics and dramas, etc., that were a match to those stories. They were congruent with those stories. They upheld those stories. And so my perception of self was very limited. My sense of what my power is and what my role here in this life is was limited to ideas of like, I'm Amy, I am, Dan and Giovanna's daughter, I am Francis's mother, I am Megan and Andrea's sister, I am Nancy's best friend, I am, all these things. I am an art student, or at a certain point, I am a midwife. I live in Canada, so I am Canadian. Like these I ams that are true circumstantially, but actually have nothing to do with the soul consciousness that occupies this form. And what's happening right now is it's as though my soul has decided that the time has come and that's got to go. And I think I talked about this in my last video, but now I'm really living it. So the time has come and that's got to go. And so we are, I'm in the process of experiencing like a slow, multi-layered ego death, because the fullness of my soul consciousness can't actually occupy this avatar if it's crowded by ego identification and narratives that keep me operating in a certain sort of like limited path of probability, if that makes sense. So when I was really identifying with my ego, I did certain things in my day, or I would make certain choices because that is what fit within the boundaries of that identification. That's all dissolving. And I say it's an ego death, but actually it's like a dissolving. It is a dissolving of all these limitations. And so it has me feeling like almost a strange disconnect from my own life and my own self and this avatar. It's not rooted in fear. It's not rooted in a lack of self-love, but it feels like the sensations that brought me pleasure before don't really seem to carry that same pleasure anymore. The things that I loved doing, the podcasts that I loved listening to, the clothes that I loved wearing just don't really seem to, they don't seem to mean anything anymore. And it's a very strange feeling. But I know that all I can do is surrender to it, because I can feel that what's actually happening as all of that sort of illusion and limitation dissolves, what actually is happening is that the true purpose of my incarnation and the depth of wisdom of my soul consciousness is coming in to occupy this space. And also, I don't mean it's just coming into my body. It's like my aura is blown out much farther than it used to be. My field, it has expanded significantly, and it has created this sensation of emptiness within myself that is very uncomfortable, and that I had no idea. Like, I had no idea it was going to be this uncomfortable. No idea. When I was, talking about walk-ins and archetypal selves back in January, and certainly in December when I was looking forward to this new year, I did not anticipate this. What it feels like to me is that as soon as we clicked over into the new calendar year, for whatever reason, the energy changed. And I say for whatever reason because I don't really believe in the Gregorian method of timekeeping. And yet, nevertheless, like it would have been on January 2nd with that first, I think it was the new moon on January 2nd. That is when I really felt something significantly shift. And it's like, I don't know, like a switch went off within me, and all the goals that I previously had, all the things that I was excited about just don't seem relevant anymore. Now, bringing this to the collective, I can also feel in our collective stories, in our collective narratives, why certain things probably don't feel relevant anymore. I can feel the energy of the breakdown of our previous constructs, like our societal constructs. I can feel the speed, the momentum of that energy picking up pace. I'm sure you all can too. And obviously, if you're, following the narratives, there is evidence that it is picking up pace. But I'm not really so interested in the narratives. I'm more interested in how it feels to be in my own experience. And as it's like I'm feeling the edges of the energy before it has manifested into the play out on the material realm. Like I can feel those edges coming first. And what I feel is that we are also being dissolved. The illusions that we have held about ourselves and about the way that we must operate are being dissolved. And it is scary. It is really scary. I feel it's scary personally. I don't feel it's scary so much like my focus isn't on the scariness of like food scarcity, fuel scarcity, financial collapse, although those all feel very close to me. They feel close. They feel imminently close. But the scariness that I'm tapped into is that emptiness, the void, when those illusions dissolve and you realize that none of those things were ever true in the first place. They were never real. And you realize how much of your life was intertwined with all of it. I believe that one of the things that is being called through me right now and the direction that I'm moving is to pass through that portal that I was talking about, that energetic portal. So I've described it a few times as like an awareness that there was once a barrier that kept us very much focused in this incarnation, in this reality that we have co-created, for better or worse. And that barrier was impassable for almost everyone. There were probably a very few number of incarnated souls on the world who, had the level of frequency to be able to move through that barrier. But for the majority of us, it has been impassable. And this is how I understand the firmament, is that the firmament is like the edge of the 3D field, the edge of the 3D field, the edge of the place on the scale of frequency where consciousness manifests itself as material. There's this edge, and then on the other side of that is the rest of the frequency scale, the other dimensions of consciousness. And that boundary, that edge, the firmament, was once firm. You couldn't pass through it. But now, for whatever reason, now what I feel is that we can pass through, but it's not the majority of us still, but it's much thinner. It's much more passable than it was before. It has become permeable. So the analogy is kind of like in cartoons or movies, when you touch a mirror, normally it's just solid. You can't, it's just reflecting back to you. But there are also parts in certain movies where the mirror becomes a portal and you can like put your hand through it and walk through it into a different world. And that's what I feel is happening right now. But the discrepancy between the vibration of consciousness, the vibration of matter here in the world that we normally occupy, and the vibration on the other side of the mirror is huge. It doesn't matter how thin that layer of plasma is, the difference in the vibrational frequency is so significant that to pass through it requires this experience that I'm having in order to acclimate. Otherwise, it's kind of like, to me, it feels like, you know, I've only just pushed the very tippy tips of my fingertips through it, and it's like, whew, like receiving so much energy that I almost feel like I could be like burnt alive, like just having all of my circuits blown out, because I am not accustomed to that frequency at all. You know, it sounds really nice to go through portals and go to other dimensions, but we are, as we exist here, we are not built for those other dimensions. And yet that is where we're going. So I believe that's why I'm having this experience, and I don't know if others listening are having a similar experience. I would be so interested to hear. It feels like the energy of this realm is so dense. Like I can feel the difference between the the 5D frequency. That's what's on the other side of that portal, that mirror. That is so light and fast and easy to move through. And in contrast, being in 3D feels so heavy. It's so heavy that it even affects me energetically and emotionally. It's very difficult to record this video. And I've thought, as I'm talking, at least a dozen times of just ending it and giving up and throwing it in the trash and going downstairs and having something to eat. And I have had such a hard time podcasting. I've recorded interviews, I've recorded solo podcasts, and yet I can't seem to post it. It's so strange. It feels like the energy here in 3D is so dense right now. It's so dense, and maybe it was always this dense and I am just becoming newly sensitive to it. But it's hard for me to do anything. And it doesn't feel the same as depression because it doesn't have a root in any kind of self-loathing or self-deprecation or lack of self-worth. Yet it feels kind of similar, just in that lack of energy, and also like a sense of a lack of motivation. Like, does any of it even make a difference? It's almost like part of my consciousness is already elsewhere, and being here makes it's really hard. And I gotta say too, I've never been somebody that has dealt with that starseed homesickness. I felt lonely here. Absolutely 100% for a long time. I felt really lonely, but I didn't feel homesick for another place or another dimension or another planet or however you want to perceive it. I felt like an odd ball and alone. But right now it feels like maybe a part of me is more of me is already in that other frequency of consciousness in that we would call the fifth dimension, and that the part of me that is here in 3D is finding it hard to be here and hard to move. One of the analogies that came through a long time ago for me was like the difference between trying to run, on land versus trying to run in water. That's kind of what it feels like. Like there's just so much resistance, but it's not my own internally generated resistance. It's just resistance. It just has to do with the medium that I'm in here in this place. And I believe I'm being called to travel, it's not exactly the right word, journey, whatever it is, to like across the portal through the mirror to that other dimension of consciousness. Yet it's not a physical journey over land, but it's very similar to how we would understand that. It is an inward journey of continuing to dissolve these layers and layers and layers of self-perception, these layers of ego perception, and just let them go. Let go of my stories, let go of my attachments, let go of my material, actual articles. Like I don't know if you could call me a hoarder, but I am somebody that holds on to things. I would be a sentimental pack rat, kind of. And I've never been able to sort of deal with that. And all of a sudden I just can feel that none of these items, I don't need them. I don't need them. It's safe for me to let them go. It's safe to let go. It's safe to let go of my stories. It's safe to let go of the energetic hooks that I've had in other people. And I've been working on this for a long time, but it's almost like the next level of really taking inventory, like, do I have a hook in, this person from my past? Do I have a hook in this person in my present? Is there somebody, do I have a relationship of kind of low-key codependence on somebody in my inner circle that if they, if I let them go, like, is there any part of me that feels panicky or afraid, or what does this mean, or will I be okay? It's like, yeah, I will be okay. I'm not how do I put it? It's on one hand, like, I am not any of that, and I'm not any of the things that I thought I was when those hooks were created. And yet at the same time, it's the recognition that all of these things are me. And that's why it's safe to let go. All of these cookbooks that I might need to use someday, like, it's almost as if I can set everything and everyone in my life free from the illusion that I've been holding, that they have to be in this form or it has to be in this way. But it only had to be in that way in order to uphold the illusion of who I think that I am. And it turns out I'm not any of that. What it feels like in the simplest terms is that more of God is coming into me and less of Amy exists. And the place that I'm at in this process it's been very uncomfortable. It's completely internal, completely inward, and yet I can feel that it's what is required in order to pass through this portal, in order to acclimate. Like the frequency of consciousness, the potency of the love vibration on the other side of this portal it's literally out of this world. It's literally out of this world. It's so much more intense than I can even fathom. I think I'm only getting like the very tip of the iceberg. And I'm feeling called to lead a small group of others along this journey as well, through the portal to the other side. And it doesn't mean that we are leaving this incarnation or leaving this realm. It is more like we are creating the pathway for others to follow. There is no path. It hasn't been charted yet. So we are cutting a new path and sort of blazing that trail so that others can follow as they are ready. It feels very much to me as if this version of the world that we are living in is kind of, it's on its deathbed. And it almost feels to me like we are, hearing the death rattle. These are the final breaths, and yet who knows how long it will last, of course, because we're not privy to that information. But it feels like there is so much to be shed. There's so much to be let go of. And meanwhile, our bodies and our psyches are undergoing massive upgrades. And it's like, you must all be feeling something like this. Not necessarily as I describe it. You might be feeling it very differently, but like you might be feeling it really in your body, like having old injuries activated, having any internal imbalances really brought to your attention, or having dramas really come to the surface and flare up, or any number of ways, any number of ways you could be feeling this. But it feels like, I've described this a few times, it feels like we are having new software installed. Like there is a system upgrade that is happening, and it is like we have to have all of our previous software sort of like deleted, and like properly deleted off of our hard drive. Like, if I want to, right now on my MacBook, I can't upgrade to the new operating system because there isn't enough space for that operating system. And it's like, I can't figure out how to delete enough things to create enough space for it. And that's kind of what it feels like, as though like so many files are having to be deleted right now. So many files. And some of them are, files that we've kind of been holding on to that we don't really need anymore, like some piece of creative writing we once worked on, like the book that we'll never finish, or, a whole bunch of pictures, a whole bunch of audio tracks, things like that. And some of them might be things we're totally unaware of, like, the software from old printers from our previous place of work, or like papers from when we were in school like 10 years ago that are just like hiding in some weird random corner of our hard drive. There's so much that needs to be deleted. It has to be deleted. And I don't know if this is being experienced by all humans, or if this is the experience for those who agreed to come in and allow our vessel to be occupied by more of the God consciousness, more of the oversoul consciousness. I really don't know. I'm lucky because I'm mostly just in contact these days with all of you beautiful souls, and I think that we are on the same kind of soul journey, soul trajectory together, but I also don't want to make any assumptions on your behalf. So the energy of February has been really intense, but I believe that it is all leading somewhere. And I believe that, it's going to lift. I can feel it, but I don't think it's going to lift, probably like truly lift off until the spring equinox in March. I feel like it's going to be like varying versions of this, or like whatever you're going through, like whatever your process is of having old files deleted to make room for the new system upgrade. And that we're getting instructions ahead of time of what we need to do and how we need to rearrange our lives to be able to step forth in our new, it's not even like, it's like new identity isn't even the right word. It's beyond identity. It feels to me like it's beyond identity. To step forth in our new mission of, even mission feels like the wrong word. Purpose. It's something bigger than that. It's like, I can feel, it's beyond my ability to translate it into words just yet, and maybe it will remain beyond my ability to translate it into words, but it feels like it is the higher directive of a higher perspective of a consciousness that is so much closer to, you know, the God source consciousness than what we are used to. And we're getting these little bits of that new directive so that we can make preparations, so that we can rearrange our lives accordingly. So again, for me, it's like, I just, like, all I can think about is just getting rid of so many, like pretty much everything. I don't need it. I don't need it anymore. I don't need it. I don't need it where I'm going. It almost feels like I'm preparing to die, and yet I don't think that I'm going to die. But I have to rearrange my life, as well as the rhythms of my life, and like the way that I spend my day, what time I wake up, what I do, you know, all of that. Like, I'm getting just enough directives to be able to start rearranging things. But I don't believe that this strange, dreamlike period of being, like, having the uninstall process and the new install process, like, it's still happening, you know, like there's still, the bar is still advancing. It's not done yet. I don't believe that's really going to lift until the spring equinox, but I feel like in April, it's just gonna, like, it's gonna turn over, and holy moly, that's when I'm really feeling the quantum shift coming, like the actual experience of the quantum leap. Right now, this is all energetic preparation for that quantum leap to be able to happen. Because it doesn't just happen out of nowhere, right? There's a lot that needs to be rewritten and recoded within the matrix in order for a quantum leap to happen. And that's what I believe we are experiencing. So, it took me a long time to get here, but I'm glad I didn't delete this video, and I am going to share it, even though I don't feel like it was my best, and I really question whether any of this was of value. But the ultimate message that's coming through is that if you are feeling like unsettled and unsure, and like something's happening, you can't put your finger on it, you don't know what your next move is, you think you know, and then it kind of disappears, and you know, what used to matter to you before doesn't seem to matter, or you're having really intense dreams, you're having really intense body experiences, you're having a lot of healing medicine brought in your direction. It is for the purpose of completing and deleting those files that are not relevant to you anymore, not relevant to you or to all of us and where you/we are going. And just to hang tight and know that it's not an indication of you doing anything wrong. And I know it feels that way, because it feels that way for me. I'm daily having to, like, comfort and sort of entertain but not indulge the voice, the panicky voice in my mind that's like, you need to come up with a new idea. Like, you need to have a direction. What are you doing wrong? You need to be more productive, or whatever. And just, like, hear it and know that that is the sound of my ego being dissolved, and the mind, you know, has a lot of constructs built up around it. So there's nothing that you're doing wrong. This is not a reflection of you doing anything wrong. I believe that the year of 2022 is... I mean, I was going to say a game changer, and I'm kind of laughing to myself because I'm like, well, obviously, like, 2020 was a game changer, 2021 was a game changer, but what I feel of 2022 is like, we thought those were game changers. We thought, and they were, but they were like the preparation for the game changer. And it might not even only be 2022. It kind of feels to me like this extends all the way to 2024. Like we're in this window that is, wow, the amount of change that is going to occur, the amount of change. And I also want to say this too, that it's just a reminder that the narratives are only the way that this energy plays out. And you're not reacting to the narrative, okay? You are so much more powerful than that. You are so much more powerful than that, especially as you allow more of God force consciousness to come into and sort of, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like move your being. It's like the hand of God is coming into you and moving you and sort of erasing the illusions of what your ego thought it was and where your ego thought it was going and what it thought it wanted. The more you just harmonize with that, and the more that you allow it to happen, the less the narratives like really hold any measure of influence in your experience. And you can witness them and honor them and know that they are happening, but they are the stories of the illusions playing out. The illusions are being shed through this process of the narrative. And they're this is going to be, I was going to end it. Now I think I'm going to expand a little bit. Because I had a really incredible Akashic session today with a very powerful soul. And she is of the Luciferian soul family. And she was tapped into, and I have been tapping into for a while, but kind of not really ready to talk about it. But so she and I were both tapped into the holiness and the worthiness of all those players within the narrative that represent the darkness. And that without the darkness, we cannot have the quantum leap that we are about to experience. That the darkness has been a force that has been necessary in this realm, in this plane, and we can condemn it. We can condemn all of the misery and the suffering and the abuse and the wretchedness that is, produced by the darkness. And yet, it's like condemning the soil and the fertilizer and the worms and the fungus and everything that has provided food for so much growth, so much green. It's like exalting the plants, exalting the tomato plant that yields food for us, and condemning the soil in which it grew and the fertilizer that it required and the worms and all the fungus and the microbes that were involved in feeding that tomato plant and allowing it to grow. So the darkness is crying. The darkness is crying, and it is ready to be released of this role. Because the darkness was never the fucking darkness. It was never different from us. It's never been separate. It's all oneness. There's only oneness. There's only oneness. But the darkness has been required in order to anchor in free will. Without the polar opposites, true free will choice doesn't exist. And through the process and the experience of free will, we have experienced so much evolution. But the darkness is tired. It has held this role for so long, and it is crying, sobbing in the darkness, as the darkness, wanting to be released of this role, absolved, resolved, back into the light that it actually is. And now I can't really remember why I got on that tangent. Oh yeah, it's because I was talking about the narratives and just asking you to see through the illusion of the narratives. I'm not saying see through the false flags or see through the psyops. I'm saying the whole thing. Just watch it and know that it is a dreamscape. It is a dreamscape and a nightmarescape playing out. But that the opposing forces are not really in opposition to you if you choose them not to be. And for me, coming into that place of acknowledging it with this other beautiful woman, as well as acknowledging it now with all of you, that is extremely uplifting and empowering to me, because I no longer feel victimized by it. And now I feel the capacity of my heart expand so significantly that I can hold that darkness and create a space for it to be absolved and resolved through the temple of my heart. Okay, beautiful being. This went on way longer than I thought it was going to. Thank you for sitting with me through this rambly, very raw, very authentically vulnerable share about how this energy is feeling right now and what I believe is happening. I would love to hear in the comments how it is impacting you, whether you're experiencing anything like what I'm experiencing or if you're experiencing something totally different. Either way, I want to hear from you. I'm excited to hear from you. I honor your experience and your perspective. Thank you for being here, and I hope to be back here again much sooner than later.